What if the truth you thought you knew was a carefully crafted illusion? Blake Lively is co-opting a movement built by women who courageously speak out and report the injustices they face in their workplaces. These women raise their voices against illegal situations they've endured, and since the rise of the #MeToo movement, we've witnessed some powerful men held accountable. Many have been put behind bars, and countless women have been vindicated, finally receiving justice they long deserved. But not every story has been pure. Some women, rather than standing for truth, have twisted this movement for personal gain. If you believe a woman cannot lie, think again. Look no further than Ghislaine Maxwell, deeply entangled with Jeffrey Epstein, one of the most notorious liars and criminals in history. She is living proof that even a woman can weaponize femininity and protective laws to her advantage. And now, it appears Blake Lively may be doing exactly that. She wants you to believe that because Wayfair mounted a defense and filed a lawsuit, their actions amount to what she calls retaliation. In just 8 months, she has filed no fewer than 3 separate motions, pushing for sanctions, attorney's fees, treble damages, and even punitive damages. Every motion carries the same fiery narrative, using inflammatory language clearly designed to ignite media outrage. Her legal team is ruthless, employing lawyers from a notorious law firm, the same firm that once represented Harvey Weinstein. They've taken unusual, aggressive steps, filing lawsuits seemingly based on nothing more than a stolen phone, which they claim is evidence of a secret smear campaign to silence a woman speaking out about what she allegedly endured on a movie set. But here's the twist. Wayfair's biggest mistake might have been relying on crisis PR alongside their legal strategy. While attorney-client communications are protected by legal privilege, once those messages involve PR agents, that privilege vanishes completely. This discovery issue has been explosive, revealing just how entangled PR and legal warfare have become on both sides. Both parties are now playing a dangerous game of public relations and legal battle, and neither is backing down. But what Blake Lively does next could shock everyone. Stay with me because what comes next might just turn this entire case upside down. Imagine playing a high-stakes game of chess, but one wrong move could end your career forever. Blake Lively's latest move? A motion for punitive damages, sanctions, treble damages, and compensatory damages, all filed under a California law, but here's the kicker. She's doing this in a New York federal court. She's demanding the judge declare her the prevailing defendant, the ultimate winner, and to officially state that her case was dismissed under California's anti-SLAPP statute, specifically 47.1. But what exactly is anti-SLAPP? It's a special type of law that allows someone to dismiss a lawsuit quickly if that lawsuit was filed purely to chill free speech or retaliate against someone. Many states have anti-SLAPP laws, but not all. Some states have even declared them unconstitutional, while others have been forced to rewrite them entirely. Here's where it gets messy. In federal courts, anti-SLAPP laws often conflict with federal rules of civil procedure. Some districts, like California's Ninth Circuit, will allow anti-SLAPP motions in federal court. But New York's federal courts, especially the Second Circuit, usually do not allow them, ruling they violate federal procedure. This is a critical hurdle for Blake. Even though California's anti-SLAPP statute exists, the court she's in may refuse to honor it, meaning her entire strategy could crumble in an instant. Adding to the chaos, there's a rule known as the American Rule, which says both plaintiffs and defendants must pay their own legal fees, no matter who wins, unless a very specific exception applies. Here's the timeline. Blake Lively filed first, launching the initial lawsuit. Wayfair responded, turning their action into what is essentially a counterclaim. Ever since then, Blake has been labeling every single defense Wayfair uses, statements to the press, website updates, even legal filings, as acts of retaliation. But here's the shocking reality. Filing a lawsuit is not retaliation under employment law. Once you enter the legal arena, employment retaliation no longer applies. Employers, like Wayfair, have a legal right to defend themselves, both statewide and federally, through proper investigations by the EEC and state agencies. Blake, however, skipped this crucial step, waiving an EECC investigation and refusing to engage in a California state investigation. This could severely weaken her claims. And just when you think you've seen it all, her next move takes retaliation to a whole new level. What if the very foundation of your case, was built on sand, ready to collapse at any moment. Blake Lively's most recent filing looks like a retaliatory strike, coming right after Jed Wallace dropped a bombshell in his motion to dismiss. Wallace revealed that Blake may have filed her lawsuit in the completely wrong state, systematically dismantling her claims under FEA. In her response, Blake shockingly admitted that FEA is generally not allowed to be used by out-of-state residents in out-of-state courts. FEA jurisdiction cannot stretch beyond California. Blake is desperately trying to stretch it, linking her case to a clandestine smear campaign she claims was launched against her as retaliation for exposing issues on the movie set. Here's the problem. Wallace exposed a glaring flaw in her approach. While California might be the proper venue, Blake is trying to force the case into New York jurisdiction, using multiple state laws depending on which outcome benefits her. This forum shopping tactic makes her case appear vulnerable to dismissal, and her latest motion reeks of panic and desperation. In a dramatic twist, Blake's new demand under 47.1 anti-SLAPP reads like this: I want all the money. Declare me the winner. Give me everything. Schedule a hearing now. This is now the third time in just a few months she has repeated the exact same arguments, pointing to statements by Brian Freriedman in the press, websites created to share case information, lawsuits filed by Wayfair and related parties. But here's the catch. Under FEA, an employer filing a lawsuit is not considered employment retaliation. For it to qualify, the action must directly harm her work through tangible consequences like a demotion, firing, loss of privileges, formal reprimands, or workplace discipline. By the time Blake claims this so-called campaign happened, she wasn't even employed by Wayfair. She wasn't part of their team during the promotional tour, which destroys the heart of her retaliation argument. Her three motions reveal a pattern of recycling the same talking points, first under Rule 11 sanctions, then Rule 3.6, and now 47.1, all while leveraging PR headlines to craft a narrative where Wayfair appears as the villain relentlessly harming her. But wait, this isn't just about lawsuits and motions. The next revelation will drag Blake Lively's past into the spotlight, and it could destroy her credibility once and for all. What if the real danger isn't just the lawsuit, but a past filled with secrets waiting to resurface? Blake Lively has been insinuating, almost outright accusing, that Wayfair and Brian Freriedman have been fueling online attacks through independent journalists and internet commentators. These commentators have built their opinions based on court filings, deposition transcripts, and their own reactions to Blake's conduct, especially how she marketed the film and other public behaviors they found deeply unsavory. But here's the truth Blake doesn't want exposed. She was a controversial actress long before she was ever hired for It Ends With Us. She has a documented history of conflicts on movie sets, including a major clash with director Oliver Stone during the filming of Savages, heated disputes on the rhythm section, a massive flop produced by the same team behind the James Bond films. Blake herself has admitted publicly that when she walks onto a set, she often misleads producers about her true intentions. Instead of fulfilling her role only as an actress, she later demands creative control, seeking authorship of the project. This is exactly what Wayfair claims happened to them during production. Now, none of us were physically present on that set. We can't know with absolute certainty what really happened or whether sexual harassment actually occurred. All we have are Blake's statements and allegations, Wayfair's defense, and the puzzle pieces that come through court documents. It's up to the public to decide, do you believe her or not? But so far, most observers believe her sexual harassment claims are flimsy at best, barely meeting legal standards. Why? Because Blake never filed a formal HR complaint. This raises a critical question. Was she truly harassed? Or is this part of a calculated strategy? Adding more fuel to the fire, an agreement she signed to remedy the issues she allegedly faced granted her greater creative control on the set, moving her closer to Belden's position of authority. This makes it look less like a case of abuse and more like a power grab. Her newest lawsuit and demand for money seem less about justice and more about keeping her PR narrative alive. By filing motion after motion, she generates headlines like, Blake Lively accuses Wayfair of retaliating against her with a baseless lawsuit. Whether the narrative is true or false doesn't matter to her PR machine. It paints her as a victim, shaping public opinion before a jury even sees the evidence. But here's the kicker. there's a looming motion for summary judgment likely to be filed by Wayfair. If that motion succeeds, most of Blake's case could crumble, exposing her tactics as nothing more than a carefully orchestrated PR strategy. And just when Blake thought she was in control, shocking revelations about her retaliation strategy are about to surface, and they could turn the tide against her completely. What if the weapon you forged to destroy your enemy ends up being the very blade that cuts you down? Blake Lively's retaliation strategy didn't appear out of nowhere. It erupted after she was accused of filing a fake subpoena and a fake lawsuit in California through a Vanzan action. That moment marked the beginning of her aggressive counterattacks. She launched her first motion for sanctions, invoking safe harbor, essentially saying, "You're going to pay. I demand you withdraw. Your claims are flimsy. End this now." Her second motion for sanctions came after her deposition, which revealed a damaging truth. She couldn't actually connect Jed Wallace to anything concrete. The only retaliation she could point to was the lawsuit Wayfair filed against her, far weaker than the elaborate smear campaign she had originally claimed. These revelations crippled her credibility, and the headlines that followed were brutal. Some even suggested that her entire retaliation narrative was crumbling, and this sparked her third motion under 47.1, an even more desperate attempt to reclaim control. But there's another layer to this story, one that drags her husband, Ryan Reynolds, into the spotlight. While Blake insists this case is only about her, his name appears repeatedly in court filings, raising suspicions. The damage to Ryan's reputation is so significant that some believe he may be orchestrating aspects of this battle behind the scenes. This remains speculation, but the signs are impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Wayfair has been fighting a war on two fronts: legal motions, where they've had mixed results, and PR battles, where Blake's team is relentless. Recently, a major court ruling gave Blake partial access to communications involving Kaliz and Kaslow, who work for the agency group TAG. The judge ruled that not everything was privileged, meaning Blake will now see emails involving one woman and her father discussing hiring an attorney for Melissa Nathan. And here's where things get even darker. Those emails reveal that Justin and Melissa were already considering suing Blake long before this current lawsuit was even filed. This suggests the litigation wasn't purely retaliatory. It may have been brewing since August, long before Blake made her claims public. However, not all communications will be handed over. The court protected attorney-related emails, but PR and lawyer discussions together don't automatically qualify as privileged. Even if Brian Freriedman was included in those conversations, his presence alone doesn't grant privilege. The lesson is clear. Mixing legal strategy and PR strategy is a massive mistake. Wayfair repeatedly tried to claim privilege by looping in attorneys, but the judge wasn't fooled. As a result, some of their deepest PR strategies are now exposed, potentially damaging their defense. But the real danger isn't just what Blake gains from these communications, it's the shocking truth about who was really pulling the strings all along. What if the empire you built to protect yourself became the very thing that brought you down? One of the biggest lessons in this saga is painfully clear. If you're going to sue, then sue strategically. If you're going to run a PR battle, then stick strictly to PR. But mixing the two worlds, that's where chaos begins. And that's exactly the mistake Wayfair made. Wayfair hired crisis managers to handle the public fallout while their attorneys handled the legal case, thinking this dual strategy would protect them. But by bringing PR directly into legal communications, they opened a door they could never close again. The judge ruled that when PR agents are part of legal discussions, those messages aren't protected by attorney-client privilege, leaving Wayfair's private strategies wide open to discovery. Here's the devastating ripple effect. Justin, the central figure in Wayfair's camp, was sharing legal strategies with Melissa Nathan and PR consultants, believing it would remain confidential. But the court determined those exchanges aren't privileged, meaning Blake Lively now has access to some of Wayfair's most sensitive conversations. This ruling gave Blake a significant advantage, allowing her to weaponize Wayfair's own words against them in both court filings and headlines. The mistakes didn't stop there. Wayfair's original lawsuit, which was eventually dismissed, was poorly constructed. It roped in multiple people who had no direct connection to Blake or the case. This opened the door for Blake's attorneys to credibly argue that innocent parties were dragged into the legal mess unnecessarily. Why? Because if he grants her request before trial, it could taint the jury, making it seem like the judge has already decided her case is valid. Until a jury weighs in, everything Blake says remains just an allegation. The judge must remain neutral, no matter how explosive the accusations may be. Right now, both sides are locked in a deadly stalemate, with Blake's PR machine pushing harder than ever. If she wins, she walks away with massive sums of money and the validation of being declared the victim. But if she loses, every motion, every headline, every fiery accusation will be exposed as nothing more than a calculated PR stunt. And in the final chapter of this legal war, the truth will either crown Blake Lively a triumphant survivor or reveal her as the architect of a grand deception. What if everything you believed about this case was a carefully crafted illusion designed to control you? Right now, the battle between Blake Lively and Wayfair has escalated far beyond a typical lawsuit. This isn't just a fight over legal definitions or employment retaliation. This is a full-blown PR war, waged in the court of public opinion as much as in the courtroom. Blake's tactics have been relentless. She has filed 3 separate motions in just a few months. Rule 11 sanctions, Rule 3.6, and 47.1 anti-SLAPP motion. Each motion recycles the same claims, serving as both a legal maneuver and a headline generator, ensuring the public always sees her as the victim. But here's the razor's edge she's walking. If the judge rules too early, he risks influencing the jury, making it seem like the court has already validated Blake's accusations. That's why he's holding back, refusing to grant her requests for now, until a jury decides or until a motion for summary judgment strips her case apart. Nothing Blake alleges is considered proven fact. This also means the stakes couldn't be higher. If Blake wins, she walks away with massive financial rewards, solidifying her narrative as a courageous woman who stood up against a powerful machine. If Blake loses, her entire strategy will be exposed as a calculated PR stunt, a desperate bid for control and power, not justice. And remember, both sides are guilty of mixing PR with legal strategy. Wayfair's critical mistakes, from poor legal filings to leaked communications, gave Blake ammunition to seize the narrative. But Blake's relentless retaliation, including public accusations, recycled motions, and questionable smear campaigns, could ultimately backfire, leaving her reputation irreparably damaged. As this legal showdown barrels toward its conclusion, one truth is clear. This case is no longer just about Blake Lively, Wayfair, or even Ryan Reynolds. It's about how public opinion can be manipulated, how justice can be weaponized, and how truth itself becomes the ultimate casualty in a battle fueled by ego, power, and relentless ambition. When the final gavel falls, will Blake Lively be celebrated as a fearless survivor or exposed as the mastermind of a grand deception? Only time and the jury will decide. Don't miss the next headline. Like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell.